Awesome. Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a great day just before we break for the 4th of July holiday. So again, as Jeff and the PSFK team mentioned, my name is Greg Moore. I'm the CEO and co-founder of BodyBlock AI. And we're going to talk today about something that's pretty unique. We talk a lot about reducing returns, and we are going to focus on preventing returns in the first place and kind of talk about how that happens. For a lot of the retailers out there, this is predominantly focused on apparel and fashion. But a lot of the same lessons can probably be applied across the retail chain. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll go ahead and get going. And again, as Jeff and Ignacio have mentioned, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat bot. And if there's time at the end, I will work to get towards those. All right. Well, there's no feedback, so I'm going to assume that everybody can see my screen here. As mentioned, returns are a pretty big problem in the apparel space and e-com especially. And the reality is that they've been a big problem for quite some time. And as COVID has changed a lot of how we do things, we have seen more and more retail shopping transition to online, where a lot of shoppers really expect to have the same type of experience. And if you think about your in-store experience, you're generally trying on clothing, you're seeing what fits, you're taking it off the shelf, you're putting it back on the shelf, somebody's restocking it. And I think a lot of retailers are expecting that shoppers are expecting to treat the e-com experience the same way, especially as returns are pretty much free these days. It's really on the retailers to pick up the check. And so what we're trying to do is to figure out a way to work through the supply chain, not just last mile, but through the entire supply chain to help to prevent returns, not just reduce them. We're going to talk a little bit about how to get there. So there's a negative story here, right? We did a survey. We surveyed thousands of people and that are predominantly e-com shoppers, and we found some pretty alarming stats. And so 50% of people that buy apparel online expect to return it. That's not a great stat, right? That is a huge profit margin loss in there. And then furthermore, 50% of those same people would not return to a brand if their first fit experience is bad. So as you're thinking about this from the perspective of the shopper, we are expecting to lose a lot of lifetime value of customers. There's not a lot of good brand experience if we don't nail that first fit experience in the first place, and if we don't have the tools to do so. This last stat here is something that I find very, very alarming, and we have quantitatively studied this substantially. But what we found is that the clothing and the sizing that's out there right now doesn't actually fit more than 92% of all human bodies. And that's kind of crazy. And there's some reasons for that, which we're going to go into in a little bit. But remember these stats, because at the end of the day, retailers lose about $300 billion a year in profits due to poor fit, right? So we need a way to fix this problem. We need a way to solve these types of things. But first, I'm going to spin the problem on its head and talk about the opportunity. So if we think about this, these same surveyed people, right? We think about the opportunity that we have if we did this better. So what we see is that 89% of people would order more clothing online from that same brand if they had a good first fit experience. So it's up to us as retailers and solutions providers for retailers to help enable that process, to help to give them a good first fit experience the first time that they're dealing with your brand. And then furthermore, and this was a pretty crazy stat, 17% of shoppers would shop exclusively online if they did not have to worry about fit. And so I think that number, the survey was taken pre-COVID. I bet you that number is substantially higher now, right? So anybody that had, the move to e-com or the move to direct-to-consumer e-com online in their sort of like 2 to 5 year plan, I think that just got rammed to about 3 to 6 months. Because if you don't have a great experience in the e-com channel, the reality is that you're dropping a lot of opportunity there. And fit is a huge problem for that. So we have to nail that fit experience. And then again, 40% of people would order more online if they didn't have to worry about size and fit. And so where we talked about the $300 billion loss from before, there's a $300 billion profit uptick opportunity if you have better fit and sizing solutions. And that's really where we're going to focus. We like to focus on the positivity here. All right, so again, just to recap, right? Returns reduction is great. Like everybody should be doing it. Everybody should be working on it. But if you're not focusing on how do I prevent returns throughout the entire stack, and you're just focusing on one piece of it, you're really losing sight of the overall value behind what we're trying to do here. So we'll talk about what an ideal strategy is, right? So most people think linearly. And so let's say that we had the ability to understand our shoppers' body dimensions and body measurements, right? It'd be great. If we had that going into the production of a line or production of a brand, we could design for those bodies. We could plan size runs around those bodies. We could probably even market to people based upon their body dimensions and how they fit our products. And then furthermore, we could sell the right size to every shopper because, well, we knew their body dimensions, right? Really, really cool. Biggest challenge here is that this is a linear path, right? And this is a lot of how we think about things. We produce a line, we ship the line, we sell the line, right? But how do we get the feedback back into the cycle? And so we love, we're a Silicon Valley company, and everybody here loves the notion of a flywheel, right? You start cranking it and it goes faster and faster and faster and faster. And so when you think about those same four concepts, but as a flywheel, now you're starting to create efficiencies throughout the business by learning about each piece of that flywheel. And when you put the body dimensions of your consumer in the middle of it, that becomes a very, very exciting crank, right? You're starting to increase profit cycle and increase efficiencies throughout the entirety of the business by having a clear understanding of the consumer's body. So this invokes a pretty big problem, right? We've never really had the ability to understand the consumer's body. Taking body measurements on people is great for custom wear or maybe mass customization in some cases, but it's really hard to get it in all the channels by which people shop. And so that's a lot of where we focused our beginnings on. And I'm going to talk about that when we go through sort of our body first foundation here. So in order to solve these problems, we at BodyBlock realized that we had to have a very amazing and clear understanding of the human body. And so what we did first, and this is a bit nascent, but we developed a body scanner, and our whole goal initially was to scan every human body on the face of the earth, right? And this body scanner is proprietary, patented. We captured full 3D body models, 400 measurements, all sorts of enriched information on consumers. And then we were going to provide these services directly to consumers and then use the data for some of the brands that we work with. And so in that sense, from 2012 to today, we have deployed thousands of scanners, scanned millions of human bodies all over the world, right? We're the largest and fastest growing data set of its kind. And this acts as our foundation for everything that we do. I would not shy away of saying that we are probably the world's authority of body measurements and body dimensions, right? So what we realized there is that if we have to deploy hardware to capture data, we are inherently slowing down the cycle. We're not actually going to get to solve our real problems. So we started working through mobile technologies. We started saying, okay, everybody has a phone. Let's find a way to capture this information using a phone. We built the tech, it's really, really cool, but the reality is that conversions are even lower on mobile captures than they are with actual scanners. And conversion rates are really, really hard. So that's not going to solve the problem either. So then we put our real big thinking hats on, and we created some AI to predict body dimensions. And this is kind of crazy. So with 7 questions in 10 seconds, I can predict all of the measurements that I need in order to, for the apparel world, essentially, right? So this gives me a very clear understanding of the body dimensions, the body measurements that I need for planning, for design, for marketing, and for sales to be able to fit into clothing in a sense. So now we have something that's efficient. We have a very efficient data capture solution. We're going to use that as we go into the next steps here. Right. So now we have this foundation of bodies, this foundation of tools, whether it be scanner captures, mobile captures, or predictive body captures. And now we're going to use that in a platform. If we remember, we talked about this flywheel of design and planning and targeting and selling. And so now we're going to talk about how we use all this data to enable those. And just below, here's some of the brands that we work with some of the largest brands in the world, as well as some of the most emerging, fast-moving brands in the world. Really, really fun opportunities throughout the stack. So what you see here is the first sort of product incarnation of that predictive technology that we talked about. And it's a service we have called BodyBlock Recommend, and essentially acts as the arrowhead to the remaining solution that we have here. So it's a widget that integrates directly into your e-com experience. The way it works is that it predicts the shopper's body measurements. We have a clear understanding of the sizing information of your products, and then we're able to align those and recommend the best fitting size based on this. What you realize throughout this flow, if you're watching this GIF on screen, is that there is no point in time by which we ask the consumer for another brand, another product, or another size and another brand of product that they like. We keep people focused specifically on your brand by predicting their body measurements and then recommending the best fitting size, right? So for direct-to-consumer companies that have their own e-commerce channels, this is big because you pay for people to come to your channel. The last thing you want them doing is thinking anywhere else. So from there, the resulting data set that's captured here is really quite astounding. And we're gonna actually talk about that in a second. But one of the questions that we get pretty consistently is, right, you're showing me a desktop version, does it work on mobile? You know, of course. I think what we're seeing is that anywhere between 40 and 70% of shoppers, depending on the brand, are shopping mobile first. And so when we develop our experiences here, we wanna make sure that they have the exact same look and feel on mobile as they do on desktop. The other thing is that the data is shared between the customers. So regardless of their device, they're using the exact same technology for mobile and for desktop. The same experience, right? And the last one that we're pretty excited about, we're going to launch a few pilots later, but is an in-store experience. And so if you think about what retail is shifting into, right? I don't even think that clothing try-on is a thing anymore if you go to in-store. You know, touch and feel is very limited. And so everybody's focusing on contactless. So at the end of the day, if we have this kiosk using the exact same technology, now you have the ability to recommend sizing throughout the entire channel, becoming a true omni-channel experience and creating a similar and consistent experience across all of your channels. So really, really exciting. By the numbers here, because case studies are always very valuable. Everybody wants to make sure that it works, and I completely agree. Any tool that we buy, we do the same thing for it. So we track everything, and we'll talk about the data in a second. But we generally see about a 3x higher conversion rate for shoppers that use Recommend versus those that don't. We generally see about 11% higher cart value, 30% reduction in returns for new customers for improper sizing, which is pretty big because new customers don't really know your sizing construct in the first place, and a huge uptick in size selection confidence. And so if we remember from those problems at the beginning, if we can take the size selection or size confusion out of the consumer journey, it increases their ability to purchase product from you and have more confidence in the sizes they're selecting. So, all right, so we have this flywheel that we talked about, right? And so there's a lot of information being collected with every single session. And so we're collecting the body dimensions of the consumer, the geographical location, the device that they used in purchase, and we're even tracking the digital attribution. Did they come in through a campaign that you ran on Google or Twitter? Did they come in through a campaign where you had plus size or regular size or petite people? All of that information is associated then with product viewed, added to cart, purchased, and returned, right? A very, very amazing and rich data set. And so we're going to go through the flywheel now. We're going to talk about how all this information gets used. So one of the things that we've done a lot of in our past is helping brands right size for their customers. And what I mean by that is when you're developing your size labels and constructs, you have a grade rule set behind it. And a lot of those grade rules were sort of guessed at in the beginning. The data just didn't exist. And so because we're predicting the body measurements of every shopper, we can go through and run what we call fit coverage analysis. That basically tells us how well do your sizes match up with the body shapes of your customers. And then we can use that data to enhance it and such that you have a better opportunity to fit those customers in the first place, which is really, really powerful. And we generally see fit coverage increases of about 3x when we run these types of analysis. Furthermore, a lot of brands are moving to 3D. And so if you're a digitally and 3D enabled brand, we then have avatars that are representative of that. So you can integrate those avatars right into your 3D CAD solution and develop a top true to life avatars. So now, not only are you getting the right size construct, but you know that you're fitting your clothing atop of these bodies. For brands that are not 3D enabled, which is still a large percentage of the industry, we produce size tables, and then you can draft patterns to that, right? So then, if we think about our next little cycle here, it's going to be planning, right? When we do inventory size runs, we're generally looking at past purchases. But that doesn't give us the opportunity to understand the body shapes of prospective customers that maybe we didn't have their size in stock when they came in, whether that's online or in store. And so by having a clear understanding of the shopper's measurements, now we can plan size runs for the prospective shopper's bodies. And we can isolate that per channel, per territory, per geographic location, because again, we're tracking all of that information. Customers love this because it reduces stockouts and it increases full value sell-through. Really, really valuable as far as that goes. Furthermore, on the targeting side, right? So again, most brands spend a tremendous amount of money driving consumers and shoppers to their sites. And again, you want them to stay there and you want them to convert. But what happens if you've sold out of all of your plus sizes, or let's say your larger size range, sort of large through 2X, and you have only your smaller sizes left? If you're still pumping the same advertising campaigns out there, all based on general advertising campaigns and not using body dimension information in there, you're going to have a lot of stockouts, right? Because you're just driving the general consumer. But if you have a clear understanding of how ads are driving people in from specific body shape segments, now you can hyper isolate and target those consumers by increasing the ad spend on the ads that bring in people that fit the sizes that you have available. Again, enhancing full value sell-through, right? And then the last little bit of it is putting it all to work. So the data from each segment of this chain feeds the other segments, right? So for example, you integrate BodyBlock Recommend on your site. That's then producing all this data, which is helping you design for the future seasons. As you're doing your inventory sizing runs, now you have your new sizing constructs, your new blocks, and now you're able to plan how to warehouse those and how to manufacture those to increase full value sell-through. And then as you're manipulating your market spend, again, to increase full value sell-through and to create efficiencies there, you're using the understanding of which ads drive which body shapes to which channel to buy those products. Again, all of it is working together. And at the end of the day, what we find is that when we focus on the entire stack and we can put the body dimensions at the center of that stack, you create efficiencies that you didn't even know existed. Because now you're almost designing directly to the body dimensionality of your customers. So one of the things I'll wrap up with is a quote from one of our great customers, Roan, and they just basically said, and I hate reading, but I'll do it anyway because it's very powerful. But BodyBlock Recommend has increased consumer confidence in our sizes, produced significant lift in our checkouts. Their understanding of each shopper's body enables us to improve our current inventory strategies as well as our future size and fit. And so right there, you're seeing this encapsulation of the entire platform that we were talking about before. And these guys have really worked at it. They've really integrated it. And so now they're increasing efficiencies throughout every single season because they have the appropriate levels of data to be able to do so, all sort of by using the BodyBlock platform. That's my presentation. And I really appreciate the time. I think it's always fun to be able to share these things. And I think that as we are emerging into a really unknown retail era, it's very, very valuable for us to really think through the tool sets that we use to conquer the times, right? They're going to be different, and the way that we did things in the past is going to have to evolve, because at the end of the day, the way that shoppers are intending to work with our solutions and our businesses are evolving. And so if we stay ahead of that, it gives us a really nice opportunity to be very successful. And then furthermore, again, and I kind of touch on this very often, but putting the body at the cornerstone of an apparel or fashion business is, in our mind, the only way to successfully create profit cycles, not just last mile or first mile, but throughout the entire business. And we're really proud to be able to do that and help our customers solve these types of problems. That's all I have. So I really appreciate your time. Thanks, everyone.